So we're here in Florida, which has become, the spotlight on Florida is, a delight to see if you're conservative, right? It's a delight to see not only the COVID reality here, the fact that the government is following the science on COVID-19, whether it's relating to masks, there's no mask mandates, whether it's relating to tyranny, there's no vaccine passports, whether it's related to vaccine requirements or recommendations, the Florida Surgeon General will not recommend the COVID vaccine to healthy children, which is great. Obviously, we talked about that last week. There's an article, though, from Politico, which I think is quite something. It's called Why Florida is Ground Zero for America's Culture War. And this is what it says. It says, State Senator Chev Jones stood before his colleagues in the legislature this week amid the debate over the bill opponents dubbed Don't Say Gay, and opened up in a way rarely seen in the Florida state capitol. Jones, a black Democrat who's the state's first openly gay senator, told his fellow Democratic and Republican lawmakers about his experience coming out. Living the truth, Jones said, prompted church members to leave his father's congregation, friends to stop speaking to him, and his own family members to make jokes about him. He says, just imagine living your life of 30 years, coming to your parents and talking about who you are, and you're lying to them about who you are. He attempted to convince the GOP-led Senate to weaken the bill, officially called the Parental Rights and Education Bill, which explicitly bans teachers from leading lessons on sexual orientation and gender identity for students in kindergarten or third grade. So this is the thing. This is what every time people talk about this so-called Don't Say Gay bill, which, as we know, is an anti-groomer bill, they forget a very crucial part of this. This bill applies only to kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade. So 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. Little tiny children. We're talking like children without their front teeth. These are babies that we're talking about. And so when the left is coming out so strongly against this bill, which would, yes, prohibit teachers from talking about transgenderism with your 5-year-old girl, we should remind everyone that this is about tiny children, tiny children, and they shouldn't be learning about sex at all in school. 5-year-olds shouldn't be learning about any kind of sex, nothing. They're not sexual beings, they are kids. They are kids. And yet the Democrats are horrified. They're pretending that you can't say gay about this bill. We've talked about this a lot. I don't want to be repetitive here, but this article about the overall culture war that's happening in Florida, this is what they say. This is what Politico writes. Passage of the bill was, in many ways, the culmination of a legislative session in the nation's third largest state, unlike any in recent history. In a session in which the GOP-led legislature's constant focus on culture war issues resulted in lawmakers approving policies to grant more power to parents over what their children learn, heighten scrutiny on school instruction and books, and ensure there will be turnover among local school boards, which have been frequent targets of the state GOP. Together, the proposals, touted as banner legislation, give Governor Ron DeSantis and other Republicans fuel for the 2022 midterm elections, as education has been thrust into the spotlight since the COVID-19 pandemic began and helped spark a backlash in the suburbs and swing states. Just wait, though. The GOP, it says, also passed a strict ban on all abortions after 15 weeks, approved an immigration measure that bars state entities from doing business with companies that transport undocumented migrant children to Florida, and create a new election police unit that DeSantis touted amid an effort by some Republicans to do a full-blown audit of the 2020 election. At each step along the way, there has been raw emotional debate that featured harrowing accounts from members of both parties. But listen to this. This is perhaps the quote that best exemplifies the attitude of the Democratic Party. This is from Lauren Book, the state Democratic leader. She says, I look forward to a time when we're able to get back to fighting for the real issues facing Floridians instead of these ridiculous culture war distractions that do nothing to meet the needs of everyday people. Ridiculous culture war distractions that do nothing to meet the needs of everyday people. So what is she talking about? She's talking about not teaching kindergartners to be transgender. She's talking about no critical race theory taught in public schools. She's talking about parents having the ability to see what their children are being taught, curriculum transparency. She's talking about school board elections to make sure that there's a turnover, that there's not a monopoly on how our schools are being run when they're running poorly. She's talking about election integrity legislation. She's talking about abortion legislation. By the way, remember that the vast majority of people, 80% of the American people think abortion should be illegal in the third trimester. 60% think abortion should be illegal in the second trimester. That's what this bill does. It takes what the majority of people believe and codifies it into law. These, she said, are ridiculous culture war distractions that do nothing to meet the needs of everyday people. The Democratic Party, these radical leftists, are so far removed from our gas tanks, from what we, the American people, experience every day. They are so intent on pushing their radical leftist agenda that they're willing to let us suffer. What's happening in Florida is a culture war.